Hey everybody, welcome to So Many Scares. Halloween is finally here, as you can see if you're watching the show on YouTube. I'm Josh.
Here's Garrett.
And I'm David Pumpkins.
Look at what
This is great.
I know.
look at what we've done.
Wow, look at this.
Why don't we do this every
We're
year?
adults.
Yeah, we are all adults. Yes,
And I have the hairspray for my hair. I just didn't do it today.
I can't keep
Since-
this going. So
Okay, yeah, that would be tough to wear the whole
I'm
time,
not gonna
but
do that the whole time.
no, the rest is good though. We you guys helped us reach our YouTube goal of 316. So as promised, we wore or attempted to wear Halloween costumes for the show this week. David is David as Pumpkins, as you can surely tell. Garrett is, come on, The Shining. We've covered this last So Many Scares, and then I am wearing a blanket. And a hat from the WB Tour Shop that says Writer on it.
You are a horror movie writer because your blanket is that of
ooh.
Ghostface of the
Maybe
Scream.
that's it. Maybe that's it.
I also wanted to say I'm drinking the Beetlejuice Haunted Apple Fanta as well, so I'm very Halloweened.
Very nice.
Fanta, please
Very
sponsor
nice.
us.
For sure. We would take a Fanta sponsorship.
Why not? I'm not going to look any sponsorship down, potentially. Famous last words.
You think we're too good to chill? We
Never.
are not.
Never. Anyway, welcome to the show. We're talking about the Blair Witch Project this week. One of the biggest movies of '99. One of the most famous movies when you think of found footage. People think of the Blair Witch Project. So that's what we're going to talk about this week. It is my pick. No, wait, was it my pick? No,
I think this was just a pick.
You're right. This was a pick. I don't know why I stole it.
The audience didn't pick it. We didn't pick it.
No, we purposely picked it because it bridges between Halloween and 1999. Party Like It's 1999 November.
I think I've just been excited to talk about it, and that's why I said mine. But no, yeah, this was a show pick, but it's very interesting. It's the first film of the internet era to go really viral. It's often considered one of the first movies to use internet as its primary source of marketing, and then it pretty heavily revived what was a very niche genre in found footage prior to 99, and now it's exploded into what it is now because of the Blair Witch Project. To prime you up a little bit, in October 1994, 3 student filmmakers disappeared in the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland, while shooting a documentary. A year later, their footage was found. That is, I think, almost verbatim, if not verbatim, what we see on the opening title card of the movie. That's what Letterboxd describes the movie as. Let's hear the box office history of this movie, which I'm sure will be an extended conversation throughout the show, probably.
Oh, maybe we're gonna come back to it at times here. So the film technically got its first debut the Labor Day weekend, September 6th of 1999. That was only limited release, only a few theaters across the country. It would end up getting its wide release. It's got its wide release a few weeks later on July 30th of 1999. Opening in the number 2 spot with $29.2 million. That viral marketing really paid off, mostly because they convinced people that this actually happened. That was the big rumor, like, oh man, this actually happened. It's real footage. The number 1 movie that weekend was Runaway Bride. So you want to talk about alternative, you want to talk about counter programming. Runaway Bride, starring Julia Roberts, was the number 1 movie. At number 3, one of my favorite movies from '99, Deep Blue Sea, was the number 3 movie with 19.1. At number 4, you had The Haunting. And at number 5, dropping down from the 2 spot, was Inspector Gadget, starring Matthew Broderick.
I just found my pick, baby.
Inspector
I'm
Gadget,
kidding.
exactly.
Or am I?
Maybe. This was, you want to talk about trends. The late 90s through early 2000s had a trend of reimagining old cartoons as live action films. Anyway.
Gee, it sounds kind of like Disney.
It's all cyclical.
Yeah, those are cartoons. Anyway, its U.S. run, it would actually be pretty huge. To go back to its opening weekend, though, the $29 million, that's about the equivalent of $55 million today, so about as good as Venom: The Last Stand, which just opened up this weekend. Its U.S. run, it made about $140.5 million in the United States. That's the equivalent of a 265 run today. It made $108 million overseas for a worldwide total of $248.6 million, all on an estimated production budget of about $60,000, which is pretty crazy. Now, according to some, the actual the post-production, so like the marketing and all that, is estimated to have brought it up to around $500,000 when you look at all the stuff they did to sort of promote that film. But only cost about $60,000 to make. It's one of the most successful independent films of all time, according to this info that's mostly compiled by Variety. It is the 14th most successful independent film of all time. Most successful independent film of all time is fortunate or unfortunate, depending on who you ask, Passion of the Christ, followed by just a slew of honestly kind of awesome films. All that despite never hitting number one at the box office. And there's a list of movies that never hit number one, which is kind of a crazy and yet awesome list of movies. There's some great movies that never made it to the number one spot. It finished number 10 for the year of 1999. We're going to get into this over the next few weeks. 1999 was a big year for movies. Number one movie of the year was The Phantom Menace, followed by The Sixth Sense, Toy Story 2, Austin Powers and the Spy Who Shagged Me, and The Matrix was number 5. Just throw a few other ones that round out the top 10. You have Tarzan, Big Daddy, The Mummy, Runaway Bride, and then, like I said, The Blair Witch Project rounds out the top 10. So big year, crazy year, a lot of fun. And that is your box office roundup for The Blair Witch Project.
Excellent. Was this anyone's first watch?
That was my first watch, yeah.
Samesies.
Oh, no. Garrett, how is that possible?
I don't like scary movies back in 1999 through whenever we started this podcast.
Even still, you have a better track record than David.
Typically, but again,
in terms of fear of...
You watch them not for the podcast sometimes.
Right. Not for many years, and only if they were made in the 70s or 80s, typically. Mm. No, I did not watch this because, again, I watched The Sixth Sense, and in 1999, that traumatized me too much, where I watched nothing else. So no, Valid. When this came out, I was like, no thanks, not me. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay. I'll see it never. Until the other day.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of build to this because I've only ever heard how terrifying it is for the most part. I don't think I've ever heard anybody tell me that it's not scary in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes the build is better than the payoff. And I think this one was that for me. Mm-hmm. That's my first thought.
That is certainly a thought that is valid.
So what you're saying is it wasn't too scary for you then?
No, not necessarily. Because again, I think the found footage aspect of a horror movie is terrifying to me because of the build. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As movie fans and people who have worked with cameras and a found footage, it constrains everything. It makes you only able to see what's in the viewfinder. And anything that's not in the viewfinder when you're moving can all of a sudden become in the viewfinder. And that is as good as a jump scare. The issue that I took with this one is that there was never anything that came into the viewfinder at any point in time. And for me, a horror movie has got to be one of builds. And builds and payoffs. It's even if it's a small payoff, each payoff has to be a little bit more because this is very slow and there's lots of opportunities and it's very creepy. And it sets the aura and it leads itself to really get me. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't. It never took that opportunity to just take that and that it never paid off.
Mm-hmm. David, as the other first time watcher?
I think I liked this conceptually. I like the idea. Yeah. I like the way it opens. I actually thought that the first 10 to 15 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm actually really kind of okay. Like, this is good. Like, this is a good setup, and we got to know these characters a little bit before they got out. It felt very, I was actually really impressed with their sort of improv because I was like, if this is written, it's really well written to sound like just natural dialogue. But I think I looked into it and it's all for the most part improv dialogue. And so I was like, they're doing a really good job with this. They've set it up really well. But I think, unfortunately, by the end, I was just kind of underwhelmed. Like you said, Garrett, I felt like it didn't do a good job, or they didn't manage to like push me towards the edge of my metaphorical seat at any point. Like I was watching and I was never really like, right as I would start to get tense, they would just start yelling at each other again. And I thought that honestly, if you took out the whole Blair Witch aspect and you just said this is the documentary footage of people who just got genuinely lost and turned on each other and then ended up fighting and killing each other, it's almost works better, because I thought that they captured being lost in the woods and being stranded pre-internet, pre-cell phone. Like they captured that incredibly well, and how nerve-wracking that would be to not know where you are, to like not have a map, and to just, be angry with each other, not really know each other that well, because like there's some of them, like at least two of them only met that day or the day before. So I thought they captured that well, but like I just kind of found the characters to just kind of be annoying after a while. I thought it was really slow to develop, and I just kind of found the ending to be pretty unsatisfying. And I had seen the ending before. It's been parodied a lot in pop culture, so I kind of knew vaguely what the ending was. But I mean, there's something to be said about the realistic nature of the film. But overall, it didn't really scare me, and it didn't really capture my imagination that much either. So it kind of felt, I don't know. In some ways, it felt like I wasted my time. But reading about the production was actually really interesting. So I don't mind that. I'm excited to talk about is sort of how this movie got made.
Yeah, I don't think you guys necessarily made any critiques that I disagree with or would fight you on. There's a lot in the movie that doesn't work outside of 1999.
That is
unfortunately.
True.
And that is the key point, and that is the stage I would like to set right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I saw it when it came out. I've seen it a few times for sure. I saw it as a kid, so at least 9 and up, and thought it was terrifying as a child.
Sure.
So that's just my history with it. Now, this movie was in development for a few years from some people that no one had ever heard of. They were in college at the time, and they had this idea to do a found footage style in the woods movie that was largely improvised. I think the first script was like 30 pages or something like that. Mm-hmm. So this is very underground, very indie, and that's important for how the movie takes off. There's a lot of times where I'm like, how could people believe this was real? But then, like, I do remember that as an adult in 2024, a lot more people believe a lot dumber things. And also, when you look at the environment of 99, it's there too. So the marketing started at least like a year before, and it started in small places. So it first started getting teased on this show called Split Screen. That was a syndicated television show. And the hosts presented it as earnestly as they possibly could. And that, as in, this might be real. This isn't a movie we're showing you. And they would tell people to go find out more about it online. It became such an issue for the split screen TV show that they had to get the filmmakers to make a BlairWitch.com because so many people became intrigued by it. Then, in 98, somebody called into a nationally syndicated radio show and asked if they had ever heard of the Blair Witch, and they talked about it. And then people across the country started calling into their local DJs and asking if they had heard of this Blair Witch urban legend and if it were true or not. The movie premiered at midnight at Sundance, with the cast not there because they were all billed as deceased or missing at the festival. The amount of effort they went into to make this seem real is, like, you could say questionable ethics-wise. So, like, people marched into this movie already convinced, or at least questioning, that it could be real life. And when you look at the outside of what's happening, these are people who are watching the X-Files. This X-Files is one of the most famous or popular shows on television right now. Conspiracies are all over the place in the late 90s.
Good thing that's not the case anymore. Sheesh.
Right. The Lewinsky scandal's broken out. These are people who grew up on Watergate, and now this movie that everything they're looking at is real, has come out. So that I would say is why people come to you and say this is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, because they might have some buy-in there. Whereas watching it today for the first time, you're not gonna. And that is my soapbox history of the Blair Witch Project as I know it.
No, I think that there's a lot to that. There's a lot to, you think back to when we were kids and there was the aspect of your parents don't want you to watch this movie. And that goes a long way to helping make things cool. Like, I thought James Bond movies were like super cool just because my dad wouldn't let me watch them. Then I started watching them. I'm like, these are cheesy as heck. And then, so like the idea that like, hey, this is a movie you're not supposed to see. Like, these people like they're going to show you somebody actually get murdered or something like that. Like it was a scary idea. It was cool to like sneak out. It was a cool crime to sneak out and go see the Blair Witch Project. So I can definitely see people in that mindset and think about the early days of the internet when like you couldn't just go and look up all the information on these people that you wanted. That they purposely put false information out there to make you think that these people actually were still missing and presumed
Man, I'm
dead.
glad that people don't put false information out there anymore these days. Jeez.
No, I'm certainly glad that doesn't happen and it's not supported
Luckily,
by
those
anyone.
days are behind
These
us.
times they are changing.
But also, you know, the faux documentary style made it so authentic. So I could see people being like really interested in this. But I would also believe it if there was a young, 30-year-old that walked out and went, I don't know, like, nothing really happened. I was kind of dumb.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by my reaction to this. That takes away nothing from the impact that it made from 1999.
Right.
That is the key here, is that. But I also want to.
That's what makes the movie interesting. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. A, B, C. It all has to connect, and if it doesn't, then it's broken. And I want to compare it to The Sixth Sense, where that movie, you do know the twist, and it made it better. This time, you know the twist, and the twist is that they're not dead. And so it doesn't hold up as well. They had moments where they could have really increased that terror factor. Mm-hmm. And it's a cheap indie budget movie. Like, no surprise that that's not possible for some of these things. But like, you go back and I'll compare it to Paranormal Activity. David, you're not a fan of that movie, but I would argue that in those builds, they had payoffs. Each time you saw something, you got a moment, and then at the end, when the camera falls, something happens. This time the camera just ends, and again, that goes back to the marketing that set it up. Without all of that build, those lack of payoffs don't hold up.
Like I said, conceptually, I really like the idea of the movie, and I like the way they structured, the way they tried to sell it, the way they set it up. But yeah, it is a hard watch for the first time in 2024. I just have too much information, and I can't enjoy it in the same way. So yeah, it's kind of hard to wrestle between those two things. Josh, you didn't really give your specific opinion in there. Like, do you think that it's held up for you?
Well, see, that's the thing, because I can come at it from my memories of it being scary. Yeah, it is different for me because I can remember certain parts and remember being scared. And even though they may not make me actually scared today, I still have fond memories of the fear, if that makes sense. Sure. I still like the last scene. I definitely agree about the payoff not being what it could have been. It should be better, I think. You don't really get much of this witch at all. So I would love that. I would love more, but the fear factor is still there for me to a degree. So, what I dislike. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask. What I want to hear what you dislike.
Oh, what I dislike is the lack of script. The movie was improvised, and you can tell. They are mostly just kind of yelling at each other. There's a lot of which makes sense, but
it gets repetitive.
It gets repetitive for what it is, and I don't know if at the time that contributed to the real factor or not. Maybe it made it seem more real that they were just kind of running around like idiots versus today where we're trying to look for a story in there and there's just not really one. That's not great. The characters are not great.
Right. And sometimes you need it can still be improv, but you need a direction. And that's where you can go with Curb Your Enthusiasm or something like that, where it's you can say whatever you want, but you got to get from here to here. I don't care how you get there, but you got to get from here to here.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like they had that. It does feel like they just went, go out in the woods and scream. How would you get lost?
Well, it just kind of
that's
felt
where
like
sometimes like writing comes in. Like you can write improv lines, at least like here's where I want, and help develop that story a little bit more.
there was interesting. I mean, there was some escalation, but it didn't feel. It felt like it was like they'd wander around the woods yelling at each other. Then they'd camp out, and then they discover something somewhat off-putting the next morning. But like the escalation of that didn't necessarily, I don't know, it didn't create the kind of tension that I think that it could have for me. And I'm very easily scared. So like, I just kind of like started thinking to myself, like it felt like most of Ellie's lines are, "It's getting dark, we should set up camp." And I was like, dark already? And so I was kind of joking because Nikki said she's got the camera on all the time. And I was like, well, there's only 70 minutes of footage. So technically they were out there for like 15 hours a day and she only shot like 5 minutes worth of stuff. And they're yelling at her, put the camera down.
Yeah.
Because like, she's like, we're walking through the woods. It's getting dark. We need to set up is like the next thing she says. I was like, okay, all right. Interesting. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that like there could have been some higher beats when they found the stuff, the twigs that had been formed into special symbols.
Yeah.
That really felt like, okay, this is the turning point.
Yep.
But by that point in the movie, I already had a pretty severe headache. So I was kind of like, oh man, I think we're getting towards the big thing. And then obviously there's the iconic shot of like her face like super close to the camera,
yes,
recording a message,
snotty, scared, crying, yeah,
which is kind of like just a heads up for anybody out there. If you're recording your final testament, pull the camera back a little bit. It doesn't need to be that close.
They didn't know that back then. No one was doing selfies.
Doing it right in her eyeballs.
I know.
You see this.
I want to. Or go ahead, Josh.
I just wanted to shout out this book because I'm going to quote a lot from it. The Best Movie Ever by Brian Rafferty. Best Movie Year Ever, sorry. There's a lot of stuff in there about that. But I just wanted to add on to that the three actors in this movie they did film it themselves. So they were filming this with Hi8 cameras individually. So that's just what they did out there.
That's cool.
Yeah, and from what I understand, that they didn't even necessarily have like a team with them. You would think like they have like a team of people like following them around or something like that. They were given like a trajectory to follow, and there were like geocache type things set up along the way, and all of their instructions were in their film reels. So they would like film, and then like once they finished a reel, they would open up and like, oh, here's your next bit of direction, to like, okay, so like, okay, we filmed all that stuff today. Open, let's replace the film. Oh, put rocks outside of put rock towers outside of our tent or something like that. I think they went about making this in an interesting way, but yeah, didn't come together fully for me.
Yeah, I think the production value and what they did is really cool, and the marketing is really cool. The biggest scare that I had was near the end. They were panning back and forth, and I thought I was going back to that story that I heard earlier from the woman that had interacted with this witch, and I saw. I think it turned out to be a rock in the end, but they were panning back and forth, and it looked like this like hunched over person kind of crawling a little bit closer, and I was like, oh, okay, something is gonna happen now, and then it just was a rock. And that's just kind of how I describe my reaction to the movie, watching it again for the first time. But yeah, again, it feels like I'm ragging on it, but I respect this movie quite a bit.
I do think found footage is an interesting medium, and we've seen some great ones. I looked into this a little bit, the history of found footage movies, and the earliest credited one is a movie from 1961 called The Connection, which is again a fake documentary movie. However, it's about a musician that's going through heroin addiction. I didn't really look into the full plot of the movie. Maybe I'll save it for another time. Probably the most famous one for a long time was Cannibal Holocaust, which came out in 1980. This is a film that was so...
That's another movie that people believed
was real. It was so bad that like the director had to come out and be like, no, these are all actors, I promise. Because they were like, we might have to press charges against this guy.
No, I think he almost was imprisoned for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
you don't do that stuff in other countries.
And then there were a handful of other ones along the way. And then after the success of Blair Witch Project, that's where you get this sort of boom of found footage movies that take on various forms. Obviously, the most popular ones are like Paranormal Activity, Wreck. One we've reviewed, Cloverfield, which I thought did it really well. And then you have like Chronicle in 2012, which was like a found footage superhero style movie. So they've tried to branch out into other types of genres, but it always kind of comes back to horror or fake documentary style stuff.
Yeah, I like the genre personally. It doesn't always, there's hits and misses all the time.
Of course.
But I do like the genre, and I think it's because I do like to have at least the idea that something might be real, even when it's a movie that's obvious, like not even pretending to be. There's still that, like, I can get lost in the fantasy a little bit of like, ooh, this is a real thing. So I do like that to a degree.
Well, and if it's done well, it makes you feel more a part of it. Like I go to Cloverfield, which is one that I feel like I'm running around with them and a part of that because of the way that it's shot. And again, they use that. I mean, it's obviously scripted; it's not improvised, but it feels like it, right? And that's what this could have benefited from.
Yeah, for sure. And
at least a little less darkness, maybe.
Well, a daytime one may be less scary, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But those real life or the factors that they put into it to try to make it feel real wasn't great for everyone all the time. The cast kind of took a big hit for that. IMDb was around then in the late 90s. The internet was just not what it was today. But for the first year that this movie was out, the actors were listed as deceased or missing. People were so convinced that Heather Donahue's mother got a lot of sympathy cards in the mail. Like,
oh my,
sorry for your lot. Like, I can't stress enough that people believed this was real and those people were dead, and it kept them from getting other jobs for a long time. Like, they couldn't, and like, keep in mind, this is a hit movie, and they will not let them go do talk shows because they're dead.
Yeah,
like their career is not. None of them took off because of this, basically. Heather Donahue says she regrets using her real name in it because she left acting years ago because just her name was attached to the Blair Witch Project and all the weirdness. So,
wow.
You take what you get.
It is, and we talked about this during our news brief earlier this week. Is you don't really get like big stars in found footage style movies because it sort of breaks that illusion a little bit. And I thought that this cast did a pretty admirable job. The audition process was just like, hey, are you a good improv? And maybe can you use a camera? Like those are the requirements.
Yeah.
So they did a fair job with what they were given.
It's one of these situations where the like zeitgeistiness around the movie is bigger and better than the movie itself. If you break it down, it's just. It wouldn't be a big hit if it came out today, I don't think. If something else had blown up found footage and then the Blair Witch came out today, I don't know that everyone would be talking about it. It would just be one of those other movies that you listed.
Yeah.
I think there's promise, and that's what kind of bums me out. Like, I do love the opening where you see the attempt of the documentary coming together and talking to townspeople about it. And you got like the two old guys fishing, and they're like, everybody who's worth any salt knows that old woman runs this town. And he's like, oh, that's bullshit. I like that stuff. That adds some spice to Burkittsville and some believability to it. Cause you're hearing these other people who are like, yeah, I've heard of that. And some other people who are skeptical. So but then, yeah, once the spookiness kicks in, they just yell at each other kind of for 70 minutes.
I mean, it just
so.
becomes really tense and just a lot of yelling. Josh, I felt bad for you because these guys just scream your name for like
they do. They're like Josh.
Last half of the movie.
I could never fall asleep in this movie. Someone's always yelling my name.
Well, should we get into our ratings?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what more we can say because like we've discussed, there's not a lot of the film itself to dissect.
Like I said, I got a headache watching this movie. I'm not saying it was caused by the movie, but draw your own conclusion. I gotta be honest. I was underwhelmed. It is not necessarily timeless. Once you are out of that headspace of 1999, it sort of falls through a little bit. I don't think I'd watch it again. So I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. That might be extra low, but I can see what people liked about it. I didn't necessarily like it.
Okay.
I am also. I mean, as far as like the enjoyment level or how it kind of happened, I don't disagree. However, I respect all of the back end stuff that went in with it to give it a full, like, mad respect, and it's a 3.5 from me.
Ooh, okay.
It is wow, okay. It's a 3.5 for me too, and I thought I would be like the highest of you all, but especially after discussion. But yeah, I'm happy with that. It's so much of my memory growing up watching it and following along with the is it real, is it not, and just reading all this history. I've got a lot of love for the movie, even if I may not want to watch it all the time, because it's really you gotta be. It's like Halloween's in a few days. Let's throw on that. It's is exactly what this movie is, but 3.5 anyway.
Yeah, again, most of it is a lot of respect. It revitalized the genre. It scared a hell of a lot of people when it came out, and so because I missed the train, I'm not necessarily going to knock it.
Fair, respectable. All right, let's do the Letterboxd game. See what they have rated this movie. Let me pull up some of the most popular reviews here. I'm not saying that one. It's got a mean word in it. Okay, you guys will like this. No stars. It's just a log. Everyone who said this was scary owes me $200.
$200. What kind of ticket did you pay for, sir? Or lady?
Right.
Or person?
3.5 stars. Shut the fuck up, Heather. 3.5 stars. No cell phone in sight. Literally just film students vibing in the woods. And then finally, 2 stars. With how annoying these characters were, I was rooting for the witch.
Man.
Yeah, they got
all kinds of
all over the place.
All over the place.
So actually, I believe Josh, you're up first.
Oh, I'm up first? Okay, well, I personally feel that it'll be closer to Garrett and I's pick than David's. I'm going to pick 3.2.
There were a lot of low ratings in there. I'm surprised by that. I was leaning towards a higher out of the respect for it. So why not? I'm going to do that. I'm going to go with 3.7.
Oh man.
I think I'm very wrong, but I'm going to just go with the respect factor.
Love it.
Josh, what did you say?
3.2.
You said 3.2?
And he said 3.7. So if you're going to cut us in half, you got a big wide range.
I do. Our average between the three of us was a 3.0, so I'm going to say a 3.0.
It's a fair guess.
Wow, this is wide. 3.0, 3.2, 3.7. I don't know how often we do this. Let's see here.
Chance we'll need a tiebreaker though.
Maybe. Refresh. Okay. We don't have a direct hit. We don't need a tiebreaker. And I won this time.
Hey,
it's a 3.3.
Nice.
Okay.
I think that's pretty good. I guess
that seems fair.
It does.
Yeah.
I don't hate that. I think it's that, a lot of the popular reviews are lower reviews because they're funny and that's why they're liked a lot.
Sure.
But there's some 5 stars in there too. I just didn't read them because they're long and not funny. Yeah. they're thoughtful.
They're smart. They thought about it.
They thought about
funny
it.
is what wins on Letterboxd. It's very difficult.
At least in the popularity contest. So, 3.3 from the Blair Witch Project. That is a wrap on So Many Scares. How do we feel?
Not as scared as I thought I'd be.
You guys want to do a quick end of episode ranking real quick of the movies we watched?
Oh, yeah. We could do that.
Gonna have to remind me.
Yeah, think about it for a second. So
I think The Sixth Sense is at the top for me. And then American Werewolf.
Yes.
1 Hour Photo, Final Destination, Blair Witch.
Are you ranking by scariness or just by quality of film?
Enjoyment.
Okay. I would also go Sixth Sense, American Werewolf. I'll do Final Destination, then 1 Hour Photo, then Blair Witch.
I'm actually going to go with David's exact one.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I did enjoy Final Destination just a smidge more than 1 Hour Photo, even though it's a better movie technically.
It is about what am I going to watch again? And I'll probably watch Final Destination.
Maybe
again.
I could see myself doing it. Yeah, you're right.
Whereas 1 Hour Photo, I feel like I've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that. Okay. All right. That does it for us this week. We'll be back next week with another round of updates for you, and then our first movie of Party Like It's 1999 November. So you're going to love that. Go to our website, somanysequels.com. You can find all our past episodes there. And finally, just follow us on Instagram at So Many Sequels Pod. That's where we're posting our stuff. So go there. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.